It's noon 3,500 years ago, and you're standing in the middle of Egypt. The sand under your feet is hot enough to fry an egg. The air is 110 degrees. There is no ice, no fan, no cold drink anywhere on the planet. Refrigeration won't exist for another 3,000 years. You're wearing a linen kilt. You're about to spend the day hauling stone, and you're fine. Not suffering through it fine. Ordinary Tuesday fine. You'll do it again tomorrow, and you'll outlive most people on Earth. Everyone remembers the pyramids. Almost nobody asks the harder questions sitting underneath them. How do you keep millions of people alive in one of the hottest inhabited places on Earth for 3,000 years, with no electricity? The answer starts with mud, and it ends with a clay jar that made water cold in direct sunlight. Start with the mud. Stone was for gods and dead kings. Your house and every house around it, from a fisherman's hut to a nobleman's villa, is built from bricks of Nile mud mixed with chopped straw, pressed into wooden molds, and left to harden in the sun. The bricks cost almost nothing. They also happen to be one of the best heat shields humans have ever built with. A mud brick wall as thick as your arm is long works like a sponge for heat. The sun hammers the outside all day, and the brick drinks the heat in so slowly that by the time the warmth finally soaks through to the inner face of the wall, the sun has already set. Then the wall spends the cool night leaking that heat back out into the dark. Engineers call this thermal mass, a material that absorbs heat slowly and releases it slowly. The Egyptians never wrote down a word for it. They noticed that thick mud stays cool, and they built with it for 3,000 years. Now look at the windows. They're small, and they sit high up near the ceiling. Why would a country drowning in sunlight build its windows like slots in a prison wall? Because hot air rises. A high window is a drain for the hottest air in the room, and a small one keeps the sun from pouring in and cooking the floor. The outside walls are washed white with lime, bouncing light away before it can land. And where do you sleep while those thick walls are still busy releasing the day's heat into the rooms? Not in them. The roof is flat, because at night the roof becomes a bedroom. Whole families carry sleeping mats up the stairs and lie down under the stars, since the rooftop sheds its heat quickly after sunset while the rooms below are still slowly exhaling the day. Even the cooking is arranged around heat. The fire doesn't live in the house. It lives in an open courtyard at the back, where a cone-shaped clay oven bakes the day's bread under the open sky, so the smoke and the heat of the flames rise straight up and out instead of soaking into the rooms where people sleep. The house stays cool partly because of what was built into it, and partly because of what was deliberately kept out of it. But what do the rich do when thick walls and high windows still aren't enough? Their roofs carry something stranger. On a tomb wall painted around 1300 BC, a wealthy man's house is shown with two tall triangular scoops rising from the roofline. One faces north, into the steady wind that runs down the Nile Valley and swallows it, funneling cool air down a shaft into the rooms below. The other faces away, letting the hot air out. A ventilation machine with no moving parts, running on nothing. And versions of it are still being built across the Middle East today. But a cool house only helps while you're inside it. What about the hours in the sun? Look down at that kilt. It's linen, thread spun from the flax plant growing along the river. Linen is light, it breathes, and it dries almost instantly. And that last part matters more than you'd think, because surviving dry heat mostly means letting sweat do its job. Loose cloth beats bare skin. It shades your body while letting air slide underneath and carry moisture away. White beats every other color, reflecting light instead of swallowing it. Now look at the heads around you. Shaved men, women, children, nearly everyone, because hair traps heat and feeds lice. On formal days, a wig goes on over the bare scalp. Why shave your head bare and then strap hair back on top of it? Because of what a wig really is, a portable roof. It shades the skull while sitting slightly above it, leaving a gap where air can move. Shade on top, ventilation underneath, and you can take it off indoor. The wealthy add one more layer, a servant standing behind them sweeping the air with a fan of ostrich feathers on a long handle, a private breeze that follows them from room to room. And what about your cup? The river that gives Egypt everything also carries things that can kill you. Mummies from the tomb builder's village still hold the parasites of raw Nile water, so the drink that comes with your wages is beer, brewed at home from the barley ration. Thick, cloudy, mildly alcoholic, closer to drinkable bread than to anything served in a bar today. It's water, calories, and safety in a single jar, and everyone drinks it, from children to foremen. The day itself is built around the sun. You're awake before dawn, and the heavy work, the hauling and digging and cutting, gets done in the cool morning hours. When the worst of the midday heat arrives, work slows into shade, food, and rest, and the tools come back out as the afternoon softens. The schedule isn't laziness. It's the same reason desert animals hunt at dusk. Then there's the problem no wall or kilt can solve. You need water, every person, every day, and almost all of Egypt is sand. So how do you keep a village drinking in the desert? In the dry hills near the Valley of the Kings sits a village of tomb builders, the craftsmen who carve and paint the graves of the pharaohs. The village was placed close to the work instead of close to the river, and every attempt to dig a well there failed. The state solved it with logistics. Paid water carriers hauled water up from the valley every single day, and the deliveries were measured out in sacks, exactly like grain, roughly 17 liters per person per day for drinking, cooking, and washing. Wages arrived the same way. Sacks of wheat for bread, barley for beer, delivered on a schedule like a paycheck. And what happens when the deliveries stop? History gives an exact answer, because it happened, and a scribe was watching. Around 1150 BC, the wages ran late, 18 days late. The tomb builders put down their tools, marched to a temple, sat down in the shade, and refused to move, and a scribe wrote down their reason in 4 words. "We are hungry here." Officials came out to meet them, and sacks of grain were found and handed over, because there was no version of this kingdom that functioned without these men. It's the first recorded labor strike in human history, and it worked. Because in the hottest inhabited place on earth, keeping workers watered and fed wasn't charity. It was the machine that kept the kingdom running, and everyone on both sides of that strike knew it. Which leaves the jar. Every trick so far has been about blocking heat or dodging it. Thick walls, white cloth, early mornings. The jar does something far stranger. It doesn't block heat, it removes it. So how does a lump of baked clay chill water while standing in direct sunlight? All over Egypt, people hung mats of woven reeds in their doorways and kept them wet. Wind pushing through a wet mat comes out cooler on the other side, not slightly cooler. Walk into it cooler. Nobody in Egypt needed to know why that worked, but you might want to. Turning liquid water into vapor costs energy, and the escaping water takes that energy from whatever it touches, pulling heat out of the air moving past it. Evaporation is a thief, and everything it steals is heat. The drinking jars ran on the same theft. They were shaped from unglazed clay, fired earth full of pores too small to see, and a jar like that sweats. Water seeps slowly out through the walls and evaporates off the outer surface, and every drop that escapes steals warmth from the water still inside. Stand the jar in a breeze and the theft speeds up. On wall paintings from around 2500 BC, servants stand over large clay water jars waving fans at them. Not fanning a person, fanning the jar, force-feeding the evaporation to chill the drink inside. In the open desert sun, that jar could hand you cool water. A refrigerator with no door, no motor, and no ice, 4,000 years before the machine that would finally replace it. Except it was never really replaced. The jar is called a zir now, and in villages without electricity, it still keeps water cool and vegetables fresh. Same clay, same pores, same theft. And when refrigeration finally did arrive, the invention this whole story has been waiting for, look at how it works. Inside your fridge and your air conditioner, a liquid pumps through coils and evaporates. And as it turns to vapor, it soaks up heat, exactly the way water leaving that jar did. Engineers added a compressor and a chemical in place of clay and a breeze. But the principle humming in your kitchen tonight is the one that was sweating in an Egyptian doorway. You carry an even older version of it. Sweat is a film of water your body pushes onto its own surface so that evaporation will pull heat out of you. Your species is unusually good at it, drenched in millions of sweat glands and stripped of fur. A body shaped by roughly 2 million years of walking and running across hot, open country. On a savanna at noon, the animal that can shed heat the longest is the one that eats. The Egyptians didn't invent staying cool. They noticed how their own bodies already did it, and then built houses, clothes, and jars that did the same thing. It's noon somewhere right now, and it's 110 degrees, and people there are fine. Not because heat stopped being dangerous, but because humans have been quietly solving it since before anyone could explain the solutions. Egypt never beat the desert with monuments. It beat the desert with mud walls, white linen, a delivery schedule, and a sweating clay jar, noon after noon, for 3,000 years. The pyramids are what they built. The cool room waiting each evening is how they managed to build it.